Welcome, everybody. Here we are tonight on semifinals night. It is here at the XLNC Heavy League. I am the doctor, being joined on the desk here by none other than Dunsey and a previously missing Juicebox guy who will be joining me for the night on tonight's cast. So how you doing today, guys?
Good. I'm super excited to be back. I was super sick last week, so I'm bringing the party with me this time. I'm going to be ready to rock and roll on this game, and I'm super excited to have Dunsey here. Heard a lot about him, worked a little with him, and now he's sitting in a very gorgeous room. How you doing, Dunsey?
Wonderful. I'm excited to be here and talk about these matchups.
Yeah, speaking of matchups, the one that we will be covering here tonight over on twitch.tv/XLNC Esports 2, as you can see right above, is going to be the Vlad Banners Only versus Akuma Glaive's matchup. Now, this is a super spicy one, second seed versus third seed. I mean, look at what we have here tonight, guys. This is super exciting.
Yeah, it's honestly an awesome matchup because the way that these teams work are so different, right? You look at Akuma, they got the top lane where there's just a bit of an egregious mismatch between Giga and Dust to Dawn, where Giga has just been such a rock for his team, and Dust to Dawn, he's been a little bit more hit or miss. Meanwhile, in the bot lane, you have that even matchup, but the real win for Akuma can be if Mouse, Dixie, and Jedi are popping off. Because while Jimmy and Prophet are awesome, they kind of have a certain level that they're consistently at. Whereas if Mouse, Dixie, and Jedi, they can really go above and beyond. But they're also known to do the classic crash and burn.
Yeah, I mean, Dunsey, I know that you were watching last week. I don't know if Jedi. I don't know if Juicebox was, but Jedi and Mouse Dixie had a huge week last week. I said that they may have been performing above themselves. I mean, do you think that they can bring it to that level once again?
I think it was definitely a breakout party for Akuma. It was a playoff buff that they got. Mm-hmm. That being said, this is the defending champs. They're here for a reason. They got the number 2 seed again. I'm looking at Prophet on the side of VBO. He's got a 26% damage share for VBO to continue to be that carry on these kind of unique picks, including that Aurelian Soul Pocket. And then you mentioned Stixie and Jedi. Typically, during the regular season, it was always the Tuper who had a 29% damage share for Akuma Glaives as that kind of primary carry. So it's really nice to see the rest of Akuma kind of break out and provide exceptional damage threats throughout the map. So I'm actually looking forward to this matchup.
Yeah, I think that the mid jungle duo is super impactful in the current meta. I mean, we all look at these junglers like Udyr just rampaging around, terrorizing a lot of people, and playing into that mid lane a lot. Another area that they spend a lot of time, it seems, is the top lane, which Juicebox guy, I know you always have your eyes up there thanks to Clonk, but we have another 2 series here. I mean, Giga coming in, some of the best non-dying stats, as I'll call it, heading up into Jimmy, who plays this Hecarim almost, one-tricking. Like, how is Akuma Glaives going to have to set this up to survive that type of onslaught?
They're going to set it up with just Giga being himself, to be realistic. I mean, this guy doesn't die. He's literally just an immovable object up there. And while I don't really look to Giga to carry a game, you're not going to win a game off him either, right? Giga is just always going to be on that consistent tank or even just a bruiser duty, where his job is to stay alive and do his part. And then come team fight time, he smurfs it because he's a beast, right? This is an all-pro selection for a reason. Dust to Dawn, yeah, he's a great player. He's gotten to the Final Four. That needs to be acknowledged. But I think that this is going to be Akuma's biggest chance for victory. And if I were Jimmy, while Dust to Dawn and Jimmy do typically work together, you got to go somewhere else because Giga, that ain't it, Chief.
Yeah, Dust to Dawn has been that carry kind of threat, though, this split. I actually had him as my number 1 top laner in my own voting. I've seen him on that Aatrox. If that gets through, you need to watch out. I'm expecting Aatrox to be permabanned this series.
Yeah, I mean, I may have been gifted with a little behind the scenes peek at the draft coming in from VBO, and I'm not gonna spoil anything, but there's a lot going on behind the scenes at this team, and I mean, there is a reason they have this second seed time and time again. And I mean, just looking at it, they are crazy prepared for tonight. Now, Dunsey, coming in here, It's a third seed versus a second seed. This is pretty crazy, very reminiscent of last season's playoffs as well, where Vlad Banners only were able to take it over Lotus and move on to the grand finals. That obviously not going to happen this week because of last week.
So actually, they beat Wyo, who's on the other side of the brackets in the semis, and then they fought Lotus in the finals.
In the grands.
Yeah,
that's why we have you here. I'm just a despo.
They avoided CGC though, and they did 3-0. They had an amazing. I think they were undefeated in the playoff run last split. So this is their chance once again. Fresh starts, bye week, coming into semi strong. I'm honestly really thinking VBO's looking extremely strong. I know Akuma had a great breakout week last week, but my money's on VBO today.
All right, and Juicebox Guy, I do know that we do still have another pre-show here tonight. So do you have any final thoughts here on the matchup right now?
Yeah, the only thing I really want to say before my dogs go crazy is Jimmy and Prophet, I think while Mouth 60 and Jedi do have a tendency to pop off and go crazy, I don't trust their consistency. I think both these guys can really flux a lot in their performance, whereas Jimmy and Prophet, they're always flying at a solid 8 or 9 out of 10. And so for that reason and that reason alone, I'm going to give it to Vlad Banners only. I'm going to give them the consistency win here. And I'm going to throw it at a 3. I'm going to go 3-0. I think that they're pretty heavily favored here.
So do you agree, Tunzi? I mean, that's super aggressive right off the rip.
My gut says 3-0. I'm going to give Akuma 1 win, maybe an early game 1 win, and VBO kind of gets settled. It's going to be 3-1 VBO.
All right, folks, you've heard it here from my wonderful analysts. And like I was saying earlier, we are going to be featuring this matchup over on twitch.tv XLNC 2. So be sure to check on over to that stream. We'll be heading over there in just a second. For those of you staying here and catching the other pre-show that I was mentioning about, we do have Glaive Esports going up against WyoBoomers. And for that show, we do have Mitchell, Necrox, and the DJ coming at you live in just a second. So stay tuned, folks. They'll catch you up on everything you need to know.
Welcome here. Pre-show number 2 on stream number 1. And I got a couple gentlemen to my left and right ready to break down exactly what this game means. We're short on time, but not short on implications for what this means tonight for WyoBoomers as they took down Lotus, your finalists last season, DJ. I mean, this is an incredible story to be told, and they're just now beginning to write their new chapter. As DJ is muted, I believe, so we'll have to catch his thoughts in just a moment. So that means, Mitchell, you get first a bite at the gun. I'm curious. You're new here to the analyst desk, but you're not new to the scene overall. And we got team overviews up top first. Hit me overall, big picture for these two teams.
So Glaive is very clearly the best team in the league, right? They have insane stats. They've only lost twice, I believe. Wyo has taken games off of every single team in the league except Glaive. So this is going to be a big challenge to just take one game off of them. The stats on the side of Glaive are just astronomical, but Wyo does have a tendency to just get scrappy, find nice picks, team fight well, even from massive gold deficits. We saw in game 1 versus Wyo versus Lotus, they were down 6k gold and still managed to win the game just through team fighting. So I expect Wyo, no matter what the challenge is up against them, to still put up a really good fight.
Same thoughts to you, DJ. It was an April Fool's joke with your mic. I'm pretty sure it was pulling on you, but you're back now. I can only assume. Big picture for both these teams.
Yeah, April Fool's joke on the world. You know, everyone just wants to hear my voice so often. So I said, no, none of that. Absolutely not. No, entirely kidding. Yeah, as we mentioned, you know, WyoBoomers are going to have a tough time against Glaive. They have been dominant throughout the regular season. I was telling Mitchell before this, it was hard to even look at some of their stats because they just belie. It's just hard to take anything away from them because it's all like, you know, 100% win rate on this champion and like 90% win rate on that champion and like massive KDA because you won all your games. So it is that difficult and this is that big of a monster. But WyoBoomers are coming off what was an epic series against the finalist Lotus. And there were a lot of really positive things in that series for me. And I think there are avenues for them to explore. You know, Papa pulled out his first gangplank of the season in game number 5 and looked great on it. That could be some extra flexibility for them. Rosero looked super, super good on a couple of his comfort picks. I imagine that there will be a ban thrown at Skarner throughout this series for Glaive, which is an extra slot that they won't have to use on other things. And I think the biggest thing that I'm looking at, the biggest difference that I think WyoBoomers will look to is Palm Goat. Palm Goat was the number 280 carry in the league, was the All-Pro 2 selection there. And Vark, of course, sort of notably got snubbed from All-Pro by both the community and by the casters as well in an overall vote. So he was not on any of those teams despite being on the best team in the entire league. So if you're going to look anywhere, if you're going to look at the stats, if you're going to look at the power and the capability of these players, I think you got to be looking at bottom lane. Trivia Boy was first team for the support role, but Birdman was second, so pretty even there. And Palm Goat could be the difference maker here tonight for WyoBoomers.
Of course, you're always one step ahead of me, and that's exactly where I was headed. The bot lane for WyoBoomers has been on point here between Palm Goat and Birdman. The number 280 carry knocking out the number 1 AD. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that, and that's going to get us to our next piece here. Matchup of this series. I want opinions from both of you as well. For me, clearly going to be the bot lane. I'm an 80 carry. I want to see Jinx. I want to see Vayne. I want to see these hyper carries coming in from Palm Goat. Maybe we get the Ashe, maybe we get the Sivir, only time will tell. But I'm curious if you all have the same opinion. Are we looking at Palm Goat Vark, or are we headed further north on Summoner's Rift?
Yeah, I'm going to go to the jungle. I think is going to be really, really interesting. Baby Powder, obviously an incredible jungler. Makes a lot of really big plays for them. He plays all the meta champions. And Rosero, while he does also play the meta champions like Hecarim, he does tend to bust out things like J4 and Skarner, which they just get completely, out-tempoed and out-farmed by the enemy by the stuff that Baby Powder plays. So it's going to be up to Rosero to make plays and Baby Powder to just farm up and be a huge carry for them. But I think the really interesting thing about this matchup is how many jungle nerfs were in patch 11.7, and it's going to completely shake up the meta.
Yeah, I actually very much agree with Mitchell here. I think if we were talking about a win condition for WyoBoomers being Palm Goat, I think the win condition for Glaive very often has been Baby Powder. And, you even saw it in chat when we were going through the All-Pro teams. Every member of Glaive was really saying that Baby Powder is their best player. They were pretty adamant about that. So I think that even with all the jungle nerfs, you do look to Baby Powder as sort of the win condition for Glaive. And as Mitchell mentioned, these two junglers play very different styles. Baby Powder, it is all about the power farming. It is all about the tempo. He is a carry threat for his team. Rosero can kind of do it. He does have some priority and about 4 or 5 games on the Hecarim as well, but he's much more of a supportive jungler, much more of a setup, much more of a play to lane, play for vision in the early game alongside Birdman kind of jungler. So if he cannot play to lanes as well as he did in the Lotus series, if he can't get ahead, I could very well see Baby Powder, even with these jungle nerfs, having something up his sleeve, knowing what he needs to do to just carry this one home for Glaive. So I do agree with Mitchell. My eyes, at least for Glaive win condition, are on this jungle matchup.
And again, the biggest, fastest predator on Summoner's Rift in the name of Hecarim has been recently nerfed. So I'll have to keep an eye on the jungler pathing, the jungler clears, and where exactly they want to apply their pressure. Next piece of information, though, as we get ready and ever closer to our semifinals beginning player profiles. We've looked at, a couple of the players individually. We've talked about Palm Goat, Vark, Rosero versus Baby Powder. Now I want to dive into the solo lanes in particular. Starting with top, we'll just go from top to bottom. Papa versus Clonk Wrong Zonk. Sadly, Juice isn't on this game to influence my opinion once more. Every time, I swear, he could tell me anything about Clonk, and I'd agree and believe it. But Papa and Clonk, these two really, really aggressive players individually. I think Papa maybe a little more hit or miss of that coin flip style, but we could see a lot of attention up here early on.
Yeah, we saw a lot of attention up here in the Lotus Wyo series, especially LZ camping Papa a ton. Papa Francesco was able to bring out the Cho'Gath, though, which was an interesting addition to his champion pool. And Clonk Gronk Zonk, I mean, he plays Nico, right? A very unorthodox top laner. Not a lot of counter picks. It's more of Nico just gets to do whatever Nico does. But also Clonk, plays just has a massive champion pool. But the interesting thing about this top lane matchup is that everybody on the side of Glaive has about above a 7 KDO in the regular season and a KDA, and Clonk actually has about a 2.5 KDA in the top lane. So if you're looking straight up at the numbers, Clonk will be their weakest player, and Papa Francesco looked great in the Lotus YO series. Maybe this is another avenue where YO can take an advantage.
Yeah, I think this lane will be very interesting. I think it has the possibility. I honestly think it's our most coin flip lane. I think it has the possibility to be either extremely interesting and like pretty wild, honestly, or extremely boring. Because Clonk does play Nico, he does play Zillion, he plays a lot of these champions that, as Mitchell mentioned, you kind of do what you want, and unless the enemy makes a mistake or you make a really good play, you will have pressure, but you won't necessarily have kill pressure. And Papa plays very weak side top laners most of the time. It's not like he can't do things on him. We saw him solo kill Accelerate on the Volibear, which has become a bit of a flex pick for WyoBoomers. He's got the Kennen in his pocket. The Nars is most played. And we did, of course, see the Gangplank come out later on in that series alongside the Cho'Gath. So he has shown some ability to get different champions, but he does mostly play weak side and look to play with either his teleport or his global abilities for the rest of his team. So this should give Clonk a lot of ability to play how he wants. The question is, how will he play with that freedom? As mentioned, the KDA not quite as high. He plays squishy champions. So I think this could kind of go either way, depending on how many resources are expended in that top side or whether the focus is elsewhere for these teams.
Last matchup to go over before we get into it all. Trinity versus POS2, both all-pro mid laners. And again, it always comes back to these mid laners, man. Can you perform in the night? Last time when we were setting up the narratives for our quarterfinals matchup, I was really looking at Trinity, saying, can you come into this series with the confidence to beat JVL? And man, did Trinity do exactly that, really showing his stuff in that series. Are we going to get the same Trinity? Or are we going to get, the Trinity that we saw early on in the season really not be able to make much of a difference, pick things like the Victor and just wait to the late game? Or are we getting that Trinity from the quarterfinals, getting across the map, making things happen nice and early?
Yeah, I think Trinity was definitely interesting in the Lotus YO series. If you remember game 1 on the Anivia, he had very two quick early deaths in the mid lane. JVL got really fed, was able to carry late game team fights. But the most interesting thing to me is that he was able to pick up the Tristana mid lane for the flex pick. Trinity being able to play Tristana is not exactly a Victor, an Orianna, or an Anivia or a Cassio. So we'll see what Trinity has up his sleeve. Tristana was just nerfed though, so we'll see what kind of prio is. POS2 though, on the other hand, has a much wider champion pool, many different playstyles. Does play the Seraphine mid, plays Twisted Fate, plays Zoe, plays Akali, tons of assassins and mages. So I think that when it comes to matchups, POS2 is going to have a lot of freedom to pick whatever champion he wants. And Trinity is just going to say, I will pick my champions that I know I'm good on, and I hope I can just scale into late.
Yeah, this one is particularly interesting to me because I think it may be our closest matchup outside of support between Birdman and Trivia Boy, in that Trinity and POS do things a little bit differently, but the general style is sort of the same. Both of these members want to be team fight threats for their team on most occasions. There are a few times this season when POS has picked up the Seraphine, mostly when both Vark and Baby Powder are on high damage late game carry kind of champions, and they don't necessarily need a third option. If that's not the case, POS is usually picking for himself to be a threat in the late game, which is exactly what Trinity does for WyoBoomers. They want Trinity to be that threat, to be that carry in team fights, be that clutch member. And so for me, this is sort of a challenge, a big test here for Trinity. Trinity is the number 2 mid laner in the league. POS finished in team 1. Both of them play, in my opinion, a fairly similar style. Trinity a little more vision orientated. POS a little more focused on getting XP and resources to be the maximum late game carry that he can be. But if Trinity and WyoBoomers want to win this series, I think Trinity is going to need to step up and outperform POS in multiple of these games, which is something that very few people were able to do at all this season. Usually POS gets that EXP, gets that gold, and when those late game fights come around objectives, just dominates those. So if you're going to really win this series, I think in this very close style matchup, Trinity's going to have a big day.
And of course, everyone going to be looking to make the difference here. For WyoBoomers, Glaive, Amethyst, our number 1 seed taking on number 5 here in XLNC 1. Again, we have another match coming up on XLNC 2. If you want to go ahead and check that one out, should be an absolutely incredible series as well. But this one shall be nonetheless. We're going to throw it to a quick break before we get into our draft, and I'm going to step away while our 2 analysts take it throughout the desk and explain to you exactly what should go down. We'll be right back with your 2 analysts.